what you're watching with Trump and Elon is pure ideology. And for all the talk about how Trump and Elon Musk, are breaking the mold and breaking the rules and taking the Republican Party in a new direction, the truth is the Republican Party has always hated taxes. That's how they built the Republican Party. It's a coalition between the business community, which doesn't want to pay taxes, and a whole lot of special constituencies which are brought together in the Republican Party with a deal. We'll give you the special thing you're interested in if you make sure to keep the taxes on business low. So the Republicans pander to white supremacists, and the Republicans pander to gun enthusiasts, and the Republicans pander to the anti-abortion fact. These are their constituencies who come together in the Republican Party, and the deal is you support anti-taxes, and we will help you with the guns and the fundamentalist Christianity and all the rest of it, okay? We all know that. Okay, what Trump and Musk are doing is cutting taxes. How are they doing it? By laying off millions of public employees who, if you don't have to pay them, well, then you don't have to raise the taxes. They're all worried sick about one thing. No one should make a mistake. When Mr. Trump was president the first time, the one major economic act of his first presidency was the tax cuts of December 2017. One of the greatest tax cuts in American history, focused mainly on cutting corporate taxes and taxes of the rich. That act included that all of this would come to an end. Remember, it was back in 2017, in 2025, this year. So Mr. Trump's real agenda, he hasn't discussed it much because he's got to kind of manage it. His real agenda is to extend those tax cuts, to rewrite that bill to make it last another 8, 10, 12, however many years he can get. The problem is our government is already spending way more money than it raises in taxes, partly because of that tax cut in 2017. So he's got the problem, how can I extend the tax cut and then face the American people with trillions of dollars in government debt, which I promised to deal with? Answer. Tell a very conventional Republican story. I'm getting rid of unnecessary government fat. You used the word before. I love that. It's like losing weight. Who could object, right? We're on a diet. So we're on a diet. We're getting rid of the fat. That was never true. That was just pure ideological nonsense. They don't care about all those needs going unmet. They are glued to the idea if we lay off millions and millions of workers, whether they work for Social Security or AID or the Labor Department, or it doesn't matter. All of that money that we would have to raise in taxes to pay for them, we don't have to anymore. And we'll go to the American people and say, look, who cares about all those public employees who lost their jobs? I am able to say to you, we will not raise your taxes. Look at me, aren't I wonderful? If you have the money of Mr. Musk to repeat that message from every bus stop, from every TV show, from every advertising venue, you might get away with it because people don't put two and two together. Here is the reality. Every president has been trying to do a mild version. We don't have lots of fat in our federal system. That's why our taxes are lower than they are in most capitalist countries. We don't have a birth-to-death health system that would employ huge numbers of people. We don't have it. We don't have a massive program to help people. And so we don't have high taxes. And every president has had the incentive. You'll be able to keep taxes down by not doing a lot for people. So we don't have fat. When we cut public employees, we cut services. Any fool would understand that. If you take half the people in a government office and you fire them, you think the other half are just going to do twice as much as they used to when you don't pay them more? Ain't going to happen. No private employer does that. The public can't either. You're laying off all these people. They are now in terrible shape. Where do you think the millions of people laid off by the government, where do you think they're going to go? They're going to go to the only place where there are jobs left, the private sector. And you know what they're going to do there? They're going to be desperate for work. So they're going to accept private sector jobs at lower pay than you, the currently privately employed person, would accept. So what they're doing, which the business community understands, firing millions of public drives down the wages of private employees, which the employer class cheers on. This is a twofer. You get less in your taxes because you've laid off the public workers, and you drive down the wages of private employees. For the private employer, too. That's why they voted for Mr. Trump. That's what they want from Mr. Trump. And that's what they're getting from Mr. Trump. That's all this is. The rest, if you pardon my Spanish, is bull. And you know what part of the bull I'm referring to. It's meant to cover it over, to make it look as though it doesn't matter. You're just getting rid of the superfluous fat in your budget, as if this is not going to impact. I know, just from one example, across the university space, I've been a professor all my life at American universities. I'm hearing from all of them that their budgets are being cut, that they don't know what money from the federal government, if any, they're going to get. They've been relying on that money for most of what they do for at least the last 50 years. My entire life has been in universities that are getting all kinds of money from the federal government, without which they couldn't provide the scholarships that they've been doing, without which they couldn't do the research, they wouldn't have come up with the inventions, they wouldn't. You think all of that is going to go on just as if the money were not there? That's nuts. There's no basis for that. No evidence whatsoever. And you know, our universities used to be thought of as rather important institutions. To underscore it, let me tell you, in the last 25 years, the United States has closed hundreds of colleges and universities. During the same period of time, the People's Republic of China has created and opened thousands of colleges. I mean, we wonder why the Chinese, our adversary, no mystery. No mystery. It's very obvious, unless you need not to see, because you're so excited about not paying taxes and so excited about having cheaper private employees that you choose not to understand what's going on. We are watching a billionaire government doing what's good for them, for the business class they represent, for the super wealthiest among them, and they're savaging working class families. They're starting in the public sector. But the impact will be on the private as well, because that's where the public unemployed people are going to be going, offering themselves for less work. This is not a complicated story unless you are befuddled by the ideology and can't see straight. But I would want to stress, it's not working for them. The American empire is shrinking. The American capitalist system is in ever deeper distress. What the people who run this society are doing, what's all that's left to them, is to try to hold on to the wealth and privileges they've accumulated across American history at a time when the ship is sinking. Look, you know this, but let me make it crystal clear. A country that suddenly turns on its allies and friends is a country in trouble. We don't need Canada to be the 51st state. Stop it. That's a desperate idea, to get all of their wealth, to threaten them to get it so that they become inside, to snatch back the Panama Canal, which we gave to Panama and into which Panama has invested billions of dollars, saving the United States from having to do it, since we are the number one user of the Panama Canal. This is silly. Throwing the entire Europe under the bus. What is this? I'm not defending Europeans. I'm not celebrating Canadians. Nothing. But I am aware that China's importance in the world keeps growing, not shrinking. The United States' footprint in the world keeps shrinking, not growing. And the desperation of a president who is going to make Canada the 51st state and snatch Greenland. What are you talking about? These are signs of desperation. Otherwise, you'd sit down with the relevant people in these places, talk about what you might like, see how they think about it, work out an agreeable compromise the way people do whose interests may clash from time to time. Come on, we know what diplomacy is about and what it means. When the United States needs it, it's busy doing that. Suddenly, the Russians, with whom we could not have a conversation for years, are the ones we're inviting. Please sit down with us. Please talk to us. That's what's going on. Trump has invited them. Mr. Putin, to whom you couldn't speak, is now the buddy. These are signs of desperation. Mr. Trump has no interest in Russia. He has to do that because the United States has been, dare I say it, defeated in Vietnam, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and now in the Ukraine. It's admitted in the circles that run this country. Only in the popular mentality is it still deemed too dangerous to say these things. But no, don't think of what is going on as the great capitalists taking care of themselves. Yes, that is part of the story. But here's another part, which in the end ought to worry you even more. It isn't working. Their situation is shrinking. The United States set out to isolate Russia, China, whoever they thought was an enemy. You know what's happening? The United States is now isolating itself. The thing it wanted least is what its own decisions are bringing to it. The Europeans, especially over the last 3 or 4 days, having listened to the defense secretary and listened to the vice president carefully, as I did too, are aware that they hitched their wagon to the United States of 40 years ago. And now they face this sad reality that they hitched their wagon to the wrong horse. That horse is running away and yanking them behind it with no care for what happens to them. And they are now going to have to, in a way, start from scratch with leaderships utterly discredited by having given everything over to the United States. But the United States got a lot of benefits from that, all of which it is now throwing out the window. That's not a sign of power and strength. That's a sign of desperation. When you gleefully take the clappers on the side of your house and throw them into the fireplace and talk about how warm that makes you feel, you better listen to Uncle Harry and Aunt Louise when they say to you, that's going to be very cold when the wind comes through the clapboards that aren't there anymore. This is an act of desperation, not a clever way to keep warm.